Lord, we ask that you be with us tonight as we publicly conduct business for Powhatan County Schools. Please guide us in our deliberations so we may make the best decisions in the interest of the students, the staff, the parents, and citizens of Powhatan County. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. All right, well, to those in attendance, we appreciate you taking this your time out of this very beautiful afternoon to join us. First item on the agenda, or next item on the agenda, is the approval of this draft agenda. Do any members have changes necessary to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve the draft agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion with a second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So we have approved an agenda. Takes us to the public comment period. This is an opportunity for individuals wishing to address the board to come forward and be heard. There is a time limit of 3 minutes per individual and 5 minutes per group with a 30-minute total time limit. Again, public comment period is open. We would ask that the speakers address their comments to the board as a whole, not to individual board members, and we would ask that they identify themselves both by name and address. Public comment period is open. All right, once again, public comment period is open. All right, seeing no movement, I bring public comment period to a close. Takes us to item 3 on the agenda, the superintendent's report. Dr. Jones.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is to consider approval for the 2019-2020 school board budget. The budget that is presented for your consideration tonight is the same that was presented on March 12th. As a reminder to the board, we conducted a public hearing on March 12th, and there were no comments from the public. This is the same budget that we also presented at our joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors on March 18th. Staff is requesting 2 motions tonight, or 2 approvals. One is for the operating budget for fiscal year 2020, and then as a separate item, the food service budget for FY 2020. And those motions are there for your consideration. We've also included, as we have each time the budget is presented, has been presented over the last 2 months, a revenue and expenditure summary, the category budgets that will be passed along to the Board of Supervisors if the school board approves the budget, as well as all of our line items for your consideration.
All right, so this is an item that we've spent considerable time and effort in discussing over the past several meetings. Are there any further questions or comments from any board members regarding the budget? Any further discussion?
Excuse me,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chairman.
Mrs. Inman.
Dr. Jones, was there any input that you received from any staff members or teachers or?
I didn't receive any feedback, sent several budget updates each time we presented the budget, and a couple thank yous for keeping them informed, but nothing specific related to staff members, things that they wanted in, or didn't want in the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good. We appreciate your communication with staff. Thank you very much. Certainly want to keep them informed. All right, other questions or comments?
Just
Mr. Cole.
in listening to with their joint meeting last week with the board supervisors, we certainly appreciate their support, but I must confess I have some angst over this fire and rescue increase that's being looked at, and I'm hoping that that's not going to have any impact on their budget down the road. But I just think it's something we need to keep in mind, and hope, like I say, hope for the best, and certainly try to make our feelings known that we've been good stewards and we continue to be good stewards, and we're hoping that we've cut to match what they proposed to give us, and it's already been painful enough. We certainly hope that we don't have to cut anymore.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cole. In the spirit of Mr. Cole's statement, have we received any feedback from the county?
We have not.
So no comments from staff?
No comments from staff other than the ones that the Board of Supervisors made at our public meeting.
Okay.
And when are they
Mrs. Ayers.
scheduled to approve their budget?
We have Brett Chardine here, Assistant County Manager, or County Administrator. Do you have any?
Step right up, Mr. Chardine. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Last night's Board of Supervisors meeting, they discussed the budget. So I believe the plan leaving that was to separate the school budget because they were, I think, comfortable with what you all had proposed and wanted to be able to meet your deadlines. So I think they're going to separate that out, past that sooner, I believe at the April meeting, I think it is,
Okay.
and then deal with their side of it later. So they looked at some schedules as far as their end, but that will be following school board, I believe.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Sir.
update.
That's
If-
good.
don't-
Thank you.
Don't step away from the podium. Since you have reached the podium, is there anybody else that would like to, any other members like to ask a question of our county staff here?
That's good information to
Yeah.
have.
Good information.
you
We appreciate
for
your attendance and your
reporting.
sharing that with us. Any other questions for him? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here this evening. All right, other questions or comments regarding the operating budget? Our proposed budget. All right, well, if there are none, the motions that we need this evening are contained in the third paragraph of our background information.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the operating budget for FY 2019-2020 in the amount of $48,206,597.
All right, we want to take these separately, I assume, so that's our first motion. Is there a second to Mr. Cole's motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this budget in the amount of $48,206.
48 million.
$48 million. All right, let me say this again. Mr. Cole's motion to approve FY 2019-2020 proposed operating budget in the amount of $48,206,597. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Excuse me.
Is there a second motion?
I will also move that we approve the food service budget for 2019-2020 in the amount of $1,413,121.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of Mr. Cole's second motion of the evening, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, thank you for
Great.
that, Dr.
Thank
Jones.
you. Thank you, members of the board. The next item is to consider approval for health insurance renewal and rate sheets for 2019-2020. I'm going to ask Mr. Johns to come to the podium to go through. There's one correction on the health insurance renewal sheet that was made, and there's also some survey results attached that the school board had requested. So I'm going to let him summarize those as well and answer any other questions the board may have about this item.
Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, Dr. Jones and board members, and thank you for your time. The rate sheets were presented at the last meeting in draft, and as Dr. Jones stated on the first attachment, the rate sheet that is for employees hired after July 1, 2015, everything was correct except for in the high deductible plan. It had this year's rates on it, but the other sheet had the correct numbers on there. I just had failed to update that, but those numbers were presented, and the board and employees were able to see that on the second rate sheet. So there are no other changes, on that. I have also added two other items which we sort of verbally reported at the last meeting, and that is to show the board the variances in the premiums from this year as we go forward with the 1.8% increase. And that is, yes, that slide. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Basically, the Key Advantage 500 plan had no changes to the premium. They were $1, $2, and $3, but the variances for the 250 and the high deductible were greater. I have a note on the bottom of this. Even though we are showing dual both and family both on the high deductible plan, there are no employees in that plan at all. The last sheet that I wanted to share with the board is the percent of the participants and the percent of participants in each plan. The left side of the sheet shows you where we were last year, and we were at 51% for the premium plan, the Key Advantage expanded, about 45% of our employees in the 500 plan and under 5% in the high deductible. Because of the changes that the school board made to the plans, we moved from the expanded to the 250 plan, provided the incentive for a health savings account for employees to go to the high deductible plan. Those percentages have shifted, and they've shifted, where we, in the direction that we want them to go. We now have an even split in the 250 and 500 plan. I mean, it's 44.63% versus 44.83. So that's really, that's even. The high deductible, which was, we provided an incentive and we're wanting employees to move to that. And we had 24 in it before, we now have 51. And so that jumped from 4.76% to 10.54. So that is going in the direction that we intended for it to go. The board had also asked us at the last meeting if we would do a survey with the employees that are in the high deductible plan. And we have 51 we've got 51 employees that are in the high deductible plan. We had 28 responded, so that was a pretty good response for those employee groups. And as the first question, and you can see all the questions that we ask on the survey, most of the employees are either in the single plan or family plan of the ones that responded. Also, most of them, 96% of them, have just recently been in this plan, 5 years or less. The majority of those that are in it are satisfied with it, 71% versus 28. But we know this plan is not for everybody. As we went out and briefed everybody last year, we told them that it was not. Next question was asking these employees if they are also contributing to their health savings account. And almost 60% are contributing, 41% are not. They're only, accepting the contribution from the school board. And then, we had the question of would you recommend it? And that was 68% to 32% of the employees that recommended it. We also asked them to provide responses and comments on this. And some of the comments that why some people would not recommend it is because they recognize it's not for everyone. And, we know it's not for everyone. We have briefed everybody on that before. But I'd be happy to address any specific questions that the board may have on the survey. But I think the results of this survey are pretty much what we expected to see.
All right, questions for Mr. Jones? Mr. Gunter.
Mr. Chairman, it's not so much a question for Mr. Johns, but the heartburn that I continue to have with this arrangement stems around the differences in employee costs to health care for single employees, or let's just say employees that there's one person employed in the school, and ones where the both people are employed in the school and are grandfathered in the old plan. And even though we are passing along the same dollar increase for each of the participants per our 2016 suggestions from the staff, when you look at the rates for 2019, in all cases but one, the dual both and the family both categories are paying less than half, not half, but less than half of their monthly out-of-pocket compared to a single employee. And in a couple of cases, and it's particularly the high deductible plan, the dual both employees would pay less than a third the cost for the two of them versus a single. Now, I know that there's no both category employees in the high deductible selection because, frankly, the other two plans are so attractive price-wise, there's no one taking that. And in the case of the employee plus one, in the Key Advantage 500, if both people are employed, they're paying less than a quarter of what the single employee would pay for themselves and their spouse. So you're talking over 4 times more to insure yourself and your spouse if you have one person working in Powhatan County versus if you have 2. Personally, for me, that's some heartburn, and I guess my open question to the board is, do we, continue moving forward to only pass along the same dollar increases, or do we come to a different arrangement where these plans and the costs to the families converge at some reasonable date in the future? Because I just don't like the differences that we see given the cost of health care for all of our employees, to see some get such a huge benefit over others. That's all I had to comment on.
All right. Discussion or response from Mr. Conklin? Mrs. Emo.
Mr. Chairman, what did we decide in 2016? Could you refresh my memory, please?
Sure. So I guess in 2015, we changed the plans and didn't make this available to new employees.
In 2015 or 2016?
2015.
Okay.
That was the first action the board took. And at that time, I think we had 56 people or 52 people.
50-something.
Yeah, that were in the plan. We now currently have 18 that are still involved in that plan. So we've had quite a drop-off in the number and participation. And then in 2016, we did at least 2 presentations to the board where we talked about quantifying what the benefit was, and if you were a dual, if there was 2 employees, that they would get the same benefit because they would if they were single. We figured out some formulas, and at that point, the recommendation from staff was to continue passing along the same dollar increase. In many cases, it would be a higher percentage increase for the dual individuals, but to continue with that, and that's what we've been doing since 2016, following that practice. So the same dollar amount increase for dual and for non-dual.
Same dollar amount. Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't want to insinuate that the
Mr.
staff is
Conklin.
not following our recommendations. They are, and they're passing along exactly the same dollar increase. There was, $24 in one category. The Key Advantage 500 only increased by $1 or $2, which were passed along the same for the dual both versus the single. And it is a larger percentage increase for the both category because their premium is much, their out-of-pocket is
Right.
much smaller. So my question is moving forward, do we continue that, or do we explore alternatives?
Okay. Dr. Jones, would you repeat one of the numbers you gave just a moment ago? How many employees did you say we have left that take advantage of that circumstance? Did you say 18
That's,
family? 18
yeah, but I'm going to let
groups of
Mr.
employees?
Johns.
It's on the bottom of the sheet.
11,
Which
there
one?
are 17
17.
now.
17 groups of employees.
Right, so that's 17 policies, so it would be
Right.
34 employees, yes, sir.
7, okay. So what was it before then?
We were, back in 16 when we were doing this, the number was 50-something, I don't remember
And that
precisely.
means 100 employees or 50 policies?
There was 50-something policies back then.
50-something policies,
so,
okay. So we've only gone down,
So we've gone
20?
down from 50-something policies to 17. So it's
of
less than.
17 policies?
Right.
Okay.
It was 50-something policies versus 17, so it's more than half in that time period.
66% increase, it was 50 to begin with. So.
50-some.
Mr. Cole, do you have comments?
I have not changed my position since 2015. If we are fortunate enough to have husband and wife teaching here, I think they deserve the same benefit as if they were teaching separately in 2 different school divisions. And I believe that within the next probably 5 to 10 years, you're going to lose everybody that's in that category anyway. So nobody else can get into it. It can only go down. I just think I understand Mr. Kunka's concern, I appreciate his concern, but at the same time, I don't feel like, you know, it'd be taking a benefit away from somebody, it'd be taking an advantage away. And I'm comfortable with the formula we have and passing the increases on, the equal increases on. And, you know, I think the good news is, and what we're looking at this year is that the rate increases overall are very, very small. You know, I can't remember a year when we've had this kind of luck. I guess that's, I don't know how else to describe it. This kind of situation where we've had this small of increase, and hence the reason nobody's here talking about it. So that's my position. I certainly, like I say, I understand and appreciate where Mr. Conke is.
All right. Mr. Conke, you're not, just so that I understand, you're not suggesting that we eliminate the benefit. You're simply
No.
suggesting that as we apply the increases to the rates, that we applied in a different way than it's been done as proposed for us.
Well,
Is that right?
the current formula never truly equalizes. And, you know, people that are in this plan, I know some that are in their 40s. They could conceivably be here 20 more years. So, you know, this could continue for a long time unless people leave the division. My concern, and the thing I don't like about it, is that if it were considered a perk or a benefit for being married and both working in the same school system, a logical perk would be to pay half, but in some cases, they're paying a third or a quarter for being married. And it's just because, like what Mr. John says, we have 17 policies, but we're reimbursing these people as individuals. So you're reimbursing them from the county coffer 34 times. You're reimbursing each employee, but then you're allowing them to take one policy out. So that's how, you know, they end up paying less than half of a single employee. We have completely different views on this. I see Mr. Cole's view, but it can only hurt. You know, money has to come from somewhere, and those additional employer contributions going to 34 people come from the remaining people in the plan. Their plans could be cheaper. So that's my position on this.
All right. Further discussion or comment?
Go ahead.
No, I
Mrs.
was just going to ask,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Emel.
I was
I
just going to
apologize.
ask, that's okay. So it was 50-some policies, so over 100 people. And now it's 17 policies or 34 people. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
At least 34 people,
Well, I agree.
34 employees.
34
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Cole, as I did in 2015. Again, understanding Mr. Kunka's point, but I was just curious, Jim, is this, or Mr. Kunka, is this something that you want us to visit in a workshop potentially sometime, or is it something that the board agrees with, enough members agree with him to talk about it again, or is it?
I'm not going to force it to be a workshop discussion point if there isn't consensus to
That's
support
what I was
to address it.
asking the board, if is there a consensus? I mean, we know how Mr. Cole and I feel, but if there are other members that would entertain
Well, the
hearing it
item,
again.
and I apologize, I did not mean to cut you
No,
off.
it's
Were you
okay.
finished, Mrs. Ayers?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say that, so this item is on our agenda for approval this evening. So if there is a desire to make a modification to this rate sheet or to give staff some other instructions about how to proceed, we would need to do that tonight, if we're talking about acting on it for this coming year.
What is their deadline?
Oh, we need to approve this by April 1st. We can ask for an extension if need be, and we have right now scheduled for open enrollment to begin when we come back from spring break,
The
Mr.
2 weeks
Johns.
following spring
Right.
break, yes, sir.
So that's what's been advertised to the staff.
I wouldn't want to force that on the board
Okay.
to make a change for the upcoming year, but I do want to leave the question on the table for I guess, the 2021 and the future board to discuss.
Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Emmel, I apologize. Please go ahead, Mrs. Emmel.
I'm always open to discussing things. I want to always hear both sides, more, you know, the full thing. But the one thing that keeps coming back to me is we decided last time that we would stop bringing it up and down for these people who are in it because it's very stressful on them. So you're right, if there's a new board, they can certainly bring it up. But I just want us to consider that, the people that are in it. I don't want to put them in more stress, because I thought we had put this to bed, so to speak.
All right, I'll make the job easier then, because I do respect that position, and I'll withdraw my request to revisit this as a discussion item for the upcoming year. And if any board member does want to bring it up and rediscuss it, I would be happy to, but I won't suggest that we do that for this board. I just simply wanted to point out that some of these rates are still very much less than half of what the other employees are.
All right, I think you probably just made life considerably easier for staff, at least over the next couple of weeks. But what I would say, though, is that this is going to, while we can have this discussion, I mean, this is going to be an issue every time we bring a rate sheet forward. While the staff will follow our, whatever guidance we provide, I mean, there will continue to be, that circumstance. So each of the boards, whoever sits on that board, will need to make a decision on an annual basis about what we want to do with it. So that's simply a reality, I suppose. So, all right, further questions or discussion? All right. So that takes us then to, I suppose, back to the issue about the rate sheet that is in front of us, and that's the proposed rate sheet that staff has presented to us for the 2019-2020 year. Is there discussion about the rate sheet that Mr. Johns has briefed us on, or the survey instrument that they conducted at our request and have brought back the information regarding? Mrs. Emmel.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for doing the survey and bringing that back, because that was, I think, very important, reading over the different comments. It is not for everybody. And the ones that it wasn't for, they can simply change after spring break, right, for next year?
For next year, yeah.
So if it didn't work out for them.
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to understand that. And is it possible to get rid of the dual whatever if we don't have it, instead of noting on the bottom for future reference?
Absolutely, and I can even, take those lines out this year because there's nobody in it and nobody's going in it. So that's not a problem, and it would make things easier.
Thank you, because it's just the whole thing is very difficult to understand to start with, I think. And if we can have less numbers in there that we don't need, the better. Thank you.
Okay. And there are, if I may, there are two recommendations. One is to accept the renewal from Anthem, and then two, the rate sheet, approve the rate sheet.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. So, and I note question 4, and the question is, and this is on your survey. Powhatan County Public Schools contributes $100 a month towards a health savings account.
Yes.
And then are you contributing to the HSA? And the response is, if I'm reading it correctly, 59% were affirmative, and then 40% said that they were not. Why do you think that number is so low? I read one response that said that they were already contributing to a different health savings account. But do you have any thoughts on why the other individuals are not taking advantage of that opportunity?
No, I don't, unless it was simply a personal or family budget issue with them. But
Okay.
these dollars are set aside pre-tax. So if you're in a 20% tax bracket, your net, and you set aside $100, your net pay is only impacted, like $80. And so to me, that's the only reason would simply be a family budget issue.
Okay. I guess I would just make a request then, if the staff could send out some additional information just to go through what you just explained, which is right, exactly correct. It's just such a tremendous opportunity for someone to take advantage of one of these things. It's reasonable to assume that there will be some healthcare costs during the course of a year. It's a really nice opportunity to save a few dollars. And I would actually say to you that if you are in a budget that's very tight, a personal budget that's very tight, this is a great opportunity to help that a little bit, because it permits you to balance it out a little bit during the course of the year.
And we do, during open enrollment, Terry Allison in HR department, and she's the one that prepared the survey. I'll pass your, comments along to
Thank you.
her, so thank you for them. But she's already lined up employees that are in this high deductible plan that will speak at each school location for the employees, so that they can have some personal testimony as to how they like the program.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But and again, I'm speaking specifically to the HSA component of it,
Right.
not necessarily one plan or another, but the HSA is just a tremendous benefit for the employees. So,
And as Mr. John said, we're doing faculty meetings,
Good.
presentations of all this material. We'll make sure to emphasize that point as well. If the current employee who's taking advantage of it doesn't do it, we'll certainly make sure we emphasize it also. And then we'll also be doing individual meetings
good.
with employees who have questions or need guidance in selecting a plan or keeping their plan.
So can you tell me, so you said your open enrollment starts when they come back when staff comes back from spring break. It runs for is it a 2-week period?
2 weeks.
Okay. How do you, just, I guess in summary, how do you make available the staff to the employees to share with them information about it? How does that generally work? Is it done on a school basis?
It is, and in fact, we just recently visited all of the schools and attended all the staff meetings, and did talk about open enrollment in all the staff meetings, and told them when it was going to be coming up. And so we'll do that again after spring break, and we'll have representatives at different locations in different schools, central office and transportation, so that employees can come in and meet with the representatives to make any changes that they want to make. I'll be honest with you, a lot of times in the past, even though we talk about this, we have open enrollments, many employees don't come out if they're not making any kind of a change. But there is one additional caveat that we, have added this year, and that is, the All Clear ID Protection plan that the board purchased 2 years ago ends at the end of this month. And so we have a vendor that is going to provide that for free to employees, but they have to sign up for that. And so I'm hoping that will get employees to come out, and they don't have to buy a product, but they do have to meet with that vendor and sign up with it. So that should get more out this year than we have in the past, that carrot.
All right,
And
thank you,
that's
sir.
a good benefit.
Yep, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kunkel, sir.
Not trying to be difficult. I don't agree with removing the high deductible as a choice for the dual employees. If we're trying to incentivize that plan, I don't think we should be taking that plan option away from them, even just because no one is in it right now. If the industry, I think the trend in the industry is to go more and more towards the high deductible type plans, which to me says that sometime in the future, standard plans are going to be very much more expensive than high deductible plans. And I think that everyone might be looking at that as a choice at some point in the future. So I have to say I disagree with removing those cost options for the dual employees, even though it's more work for staff to keep them with no one in them, because I think we'll just be adding them back later at some point.
All right, sir. We voted on nothing at this point, so.
Okay. Well, can I just say,
Mrs. Emel.
that I just didn't realize that they could, so I'm okay if we need to keep that in, okay?
All right. Mr. Cole.
Mr. Johnson, are we okay budget-wise with the number of folks who've moved into high deductible? I know that was some concern, that we would, basically, I think the way we figured it is that if they moved into the high deductible, we would save an amount equal to or greater than what we would pay in the $100 a month benefit. Is that correct? Is that the way it's worked out?
It has worked out that way. In fact, last month, as we ended February, I did an in-depth analysis as to what we had budgeted in health insurance across the division and what we're actually paying across the division, to include the health savings account incentive. And based at the end of February, we were about a $5,000 difference in savings. So, you know, we are okay in this, and so the answer is yes.
It's
we're
good to
doing
hear.
fine.
I know that's what our projection was, and that's what our hope was, and I'm happy to hear that's what's actually panned out.
And that's pretty darn close when you have close to $4 million that you pay in health insurance premiums across the division.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
All right, other questions or comments?
One more,
Mrs.
Mr.
Eames.
Chairman. Okay, I think this is another one of those things that we could put on the list to talk again, like we always do with Senator Sturtevant and Delegate Ware. 'Cause they really need to come up with a insurance policy for school employees. And the other thing that I noticed is they said about the prescriptions were higher in the high deductible. So it's different, every prescription plan is different as well?
I'll defer to Mr. Johns on that.
The benefits are different in each plan, but I'm not sure about the prescription drug copays on that. I'd have to go back. We have sent out a side-by-side comparison of all the plans, and we'll have available during open enrollment the detailed plans, but when we sent the side-by-side out 2 weeks ago, the detailed plans had not yet been updated by Anthem, so I can't honestly answer your question on that right now.
So I'll go with my first
Yep.
suggestion, please. Thank
Yep.
you.
Mr. Johns, is that a General Assembly issue, or is that an issue that the Department of Human Resource Management negotiates for the counties and cities?
Well, the plan that we're in is a state-sponsored plan, and it's been, it became available in 1979, and Powhatan joined it back then. We've been with this plan since then. And so the General Assembly has offered on 2 different occasions over the last 4 or 5 years bills that would sponsor additional plans. In fact, the last one was Senate Bill 364 that this board 2 years ago had said, we will throw our hat in the ring and see what the costs are. And they were trying to mirror that plan after the plan that the state employees had. And after the initial surveys came back, the costs were so prohibitive that, you know, we pulled our hat out of the ring, and so did many other school divisions, and that bill died. There was not enough support to go forward with that.
All right, well, I would agree with Ms. Emel, then let's put that on our list of discussion items for Delegate Ware and Senator Sturtevant. All right, other questions or comments?
Well, if there are none, I will make a motion.
All right.
Anybody? Okay.
All right, so Dr. Jones and Mr. Johns, I heard that there are 2 motions you need, if you want to remind us of the.
Sure, they're in the recommendation
Okay.
for boilerplate. So one is to accept Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield renewal.
Okay,
In the boilerplate.
so under superintendent's recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I recommend the school board accept Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield renewal and approve the group health insurance rate
We
sheets.
need them, we need them separately.
Separate?
Yeah, Ms.
All
Emel,
right,
so
I'm
if you
sorry.
wanna- That's okay.
All right, I recommend the school, that we accept the Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield renewal.
All right, so we have a motion, is there a second?
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of recommending, I'm sorry, of accepting the Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield renewal, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, Mrs. Emel, do you have a second motion for us?
Yes, I recommend we approve the group health insurance rate sheets for fiscal year 2019-2020.
All right, we have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, the motion carries 4-1. All right, Dr. Jones, next item, please.
Thank you very much. Next item is to consider approval of the joint letter of support for Jude's Ferry Road Route 60 Smart Scale project. This is the letter that the board received at the joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors. Again, Brett Chardine is here to talk about the letter, refresh your memories. The board has had a chance to review that letter at this time. We did make one change in the signature line this morning to the letter, but the contents of the letter stay the same. Mr. Chardine, do you have some information you'd like to share?
Welcome again, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity on this. So just to give you again a quick summary on it. Every 2 years, the state opens up a round of applications for transportation funding program they call Smart Scale. So this is a competitive round. Projects are scored based on their expected impact and benefit to congestion, preventing accidents, minimizing impact to the environment, increasing access to jobs, promoting economic development, a number of factors. So the county, we submitted 4 applications, which is the maximum we're allowed to submit each round. And this was one of our top ones. This would propose to add an additional left turn lane on Route 60 going onto Jude's Ferry, as well as lengthen the existing left turn lane, and then also provide an additional through lane on Jude's Ferry between Route 60 and Batherson Road to accommodate that additional turning traffic. And then it would also involve recalibrating that signal to accommodate the new traffic patterns. This would alleviate especially some of the morning peak backups that you get going into the school, which are also happening when a lot of our regional commuting traffic is heading east as well. So VDOT has reviewed these, scored these, and there's enough funding available to fund the top 14 projects in our region. This one scored 15th, so we just missed being within VDOT's staff proposed funding scenario. It's up to the Commonwealth Transportation Board to take that VDOT recommendation, consider it, change it, and ultimately decide what gets funded. In looking at the other projects, there's good projects across the region, but none of them have an impact to schools, and that's unique, and that's not something that this scoring captures. Kind of the unique vulnerability and the unique issues when you have student drivers and school buses and parent drop-off. We also added language in here about the future impact from the dump trucks that we expect to see on the road added by the Cumberland dump. So those are things that, while the Smart Scale scoring and funding generally works well, doesn't capture that. So that's why they put some discretion in it for the Commonwealth Transportation Board to move projects around. So we as the county plan to advocate to the Commonwealth Transportation Board and VDOT staff that this one should be included for funding this round. We thought it would be more meaningful if we had a joint letter, which we discussed with you at the workshop, and you all sounded supportive of, coming from both the County Board of Supervisors and the County School Board. So that's what we have before you. So if it looks okay, then we'll issue this. We'll get the chair of the Board of Supervisors to sign it, and we'll issue it to VDOT and the Commonwealth Transportation Board later this week. It's kind of to get it on their radar. We're already talking kind of behind the scenes with VDOT staff about it, but to get it to the higher ups. And then in April, they'll have public hearings on all these projects as well. So we'll plan to attend those and again, follow up on this letter requesting that they fund this worthy project this year. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, county staff presented this to us at the joint workshop last week. We did discuss it extensively at that workshop, as is the practice of our board. We did not act on it that day because that was the first opportunity that we'd seen to publicly discuss it. It's in front of us this evening. Is there a comment or question? Mrs. Ayers. Then Mr. Kunkel, please.
My question is, and I'm sure it has been done, is there like photo documentation of how dangerous that, like in the morning when those kids are sitting out on the highway, has there been? I mean, it would be probably life-threatening for someone to take photos at that point, but is all of that included with what your proposal is to them?
That's a good point, and that was one thing I think I was speaking with Mr. Tibbs about, exactly what would be the best time, best day to come out there to get a picture that captures it. So we'd like to go out and get some pictures. We hadn't yet, okay. But we can try and do that possibly this week. So I think that would help. In this letter, we do plan to invite our CTB representative to come out and do a site visit with us. But if we're not able to get that, then at least we can get them some pictures or videos, because picture's worth 1,000 words. It would help show the issue. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
because if you drive by there that time of morning, I mean, there's always gridlock there, and people kind of, trying to get over into the far right lane to avoid the people sitting in the turning lane. And like I said the other night, this is not a new issue. This has been going on ever since the high school opened, when my children were driving to the high school. So, and it is, it's an extremely dangerous situation that I think could put lives at risk, actually. That if someone gets hit with people traveling that fast, it's, every time I get chills, every time I go by there thinking, please, God, protect these kids. So, thank you.
Mr. Conkey, if I could, before you ask your question, sir, if I could just say, I would ask if you could coordinate with our school resource officers and Dr. Jones's staff when you intend to take those photographs during those high-traffic periods of time. Those are young drivers, and I just wouldn't want to do anything to distract them in their travels. So if you could just coordinate that, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and don't want you all getting a call of some strange person taking pictures of students.
You do amazing things with drones now.
Yeah.
Mr. Cole, that may be the
I'd
idea
rather a
as
drone
well.
get hit than one of them taking a picture.
Yeah, that's true, too. And Mr. Conkey, thank you. I apologize. If you had a question, sir.
Yeah, a couple questions, Mr. Chairman. Is it the intent of the improvements, when you talk about an additional receiving lane on Jude's Ferry, is it the intent to carry that lane at least as far as Batterson Road? And is it the intent to make that right-hand additional receiving lane a right turn only lane onto Batterson Road? Or is it going to continue past Batterson Road and then serve the entrance to the high school? That's my first question.
Yeah, so that one, it would go all the way through, so it would be completely connecting from 60 to Batterson, but it would be a right turn only.
Okay. And then my second question, and I mentioned this in the joint meeting, is having two left turn lanes, I think, is a benefit. Extending them is a benefit. I think it would be necessary at that point to have some sort of a soft barrier between the turn lanes and the through lanes, the eastbound through lanes, so the traffic that chooses to take New Dorset cannot cross two lanes of traffic to get into one of those turn lanes. They do have an option to go to the corner. I know everybody hates that corner, but I think that people trying to wait and cross across two lanes is a hazard in itself. And if we have two left turn lanes that are now extended further back, they're going to be waiting to get in between cars, possibly to cross to the insidemost turning lane. I just strongly suggest that be considered, and there's one example of that type of soft barrier at the bridge over the Powhatan with a left turn into the Bob Evans and whatever else is back there. You cannot get off the Powhatan and get across 3 lanes of Midlothian onto that left turn lane. So that's all the comments I have for that intersection.
I agree with you. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yep. And after the workshop
And that is going to
last
be
week.
an unpopular
Hold on one.
position. I'm sorry.
Yeah, after you've asked about that at the workshop last week, I did talk with our local VDOT staff. So they're looking at that. Typically, the soft barriers of those type of construction are things that they can often do within just their own local budgets. So I don't think it's something where we would have to amend this or change the budget on this. They could probably be accommodated separately, but we're talking with them now about how to best do that.
All right, thank you. Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion to approve the joint letter of support for the Jude's Ferry Road Route 60 improvements.
All right, Mr. Cole. Is there a second? I
Second.
assume that was your motion. Is there, and we have a second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0, and I will sign the letter this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones?
Yeah, next item is to consider accepting donations. We have 2 donations. One is a rather large donation of $3,000 from Mr. Tom Gates to Powhatan High School Athletic Program to purchase new weight room equipment. We also have a memorial contribution of $150 from Mr. and Mrs. Jane Zimmerman and the Merritt family to Pocahontas Elementary School in memory of Mrs. Jan Taylor, a past employee and volunteer.
All right, we have 2 donations. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item, Dr. Jones.
Thank you. Next item is to consider approving the use of a school bus for the Powhatan Junior Emergency Technicians Program. They're requesting the use of a school bus to transport junior firefighters to Blacksburg, Virginia for emergency fire training.
All right, we have a motion to accept, or to approve, rather.
I make a motion that we accept or approve the use of a school bus for the Powhatan Junior Emergency Technicians Program.
All right, is there a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion necessary regarding this? Mr. Kunkus, sir? Or Mrs. Ayers? I apologize.
No,
I
I
thought one
was
of you
gonna,
had a statement.
I was
I'm
gonna make the
sorry.
motion, so I seconded it.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank
Next
you.
item, Dr. Jones.
Yep. Next item is receive information. This is, as the board is well aware, we outsourced our school food service operations to Sodexo last year. We need to annually approve that contract. Mr. Johns has been working on that contract, working with the state on any changes that need to be made. Attachment 1 is the contract renewal. That after board approval is to be signed by the superintendent and then forwarded to the Virginia Department of Education. And attachment 2 are charts that show production variances from between last school year and this school year for the period of September to February. This is information at this time. We'll be bringing it back to you on April 16th for approval. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time or any questions you may have after you've had a chance to review the contract and the charts prior to April 16th.
All right, are there questions for Dr. Jones at this point, or comments?
Question, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Kunkus, sir.
the first chart, percent of students served, is that 0.2% or 20%?
It's 20%.
Okay.
All right, other questions or comments? Mrs. Ayers?
I do have a question just from when Mr. Kunk and I attended the audit committee. It came up, I think that's where it came up, wasn't it, Jim? About whether Sodexo does all the administrative work. To the state and to the federal government, they do not.
No, we still have a part-time employee who we're required to have a part-time employee that does all of that reporting. So we have a part-time employee that does reporting for both the state and the federal government around our school food service operations.
Okay, and then so money that we get flows through our school system and not through Sodexo. They're not, that's how it, okay, I'm sorry.
So I'd be happy to address both of those items. Federal regulations do require that any report that deals with the federal government, that we're involved in that. And some examples of that, we receive each year USDA food. A school employee, not Sodexo, must request those USDA foods. Any federal meal reimbursement, a school employee has to submit those. We have to do the federal reports. We are going to have a review by DOE, and that is not just looking at the fact that we're meeting state regulations, but also federal regulations. That's going to happen later this month. And so the reports that we do with DOE, we have to do those, not Sodexo. So we are doing those. In regards to your question on the funds, all of the dollars that Sodexo generates, whether it be from meal sales in the school, whether we're getting reimbursements on rebates or anything like that, all of it has to go to the school food service account and be deposited there. And so, and that is happening.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mrs. Emo?
I see the chart for the different schools. The high school is only up a little bit, but we understand that, was it our last meeting? You said that there was more participation.
Sure, we've seen, and Mr. Johns may have some updated numbers on that account, but we can get those to you, but they've made some significant changes, and we're seeing a really good response at the high school from students and staff as a result of that over the last few weeks. Mr. Johns, do you have anything to add?
I don't have March numbers yet, and these are through February. But I would also say, I mean, the percent of students served is a good thing for that to increase. And if you remember, prior to us outsourcing, we needed to increase the percent of students served by at least 15% across the division to even get at break-even level. So this is not at break-even level yet for Sodexo, but it is probably about $100,000 better than we did the year before. And so we're not yet at break-even, and that's why the draft contract has no change in it that we'll be asking the board to approve next month. All the management fee and the rates are exactly the same. They are also not even falling back on the clause of a CPI increase, keeping everything flat and level. So, and I'd also say that prior to us doing this, I talked to 35 probably around their school divisions on the East Coast, from Pennsylvania to Maryland down to Florida and all that kind of stuff. No company came in, did they, you know, meet their goal the first year, but they all did the second year. So I'm not surprised that, I mean, I'm glad the numbers are better, but I'm not surprised that they're not in the black yet. Next year, I think they will be.
Well, I think that had they started out the way they just changed, what was it, a month ago or so, I think that would have been a better idea. And I was there on Friday, and I had the Asian dish, and it was good. But the middle school was the other, when we were there, Ms. Ayers and I were there for the Civics Day, the students were complaining, and we were wondering at that time if there had been any tastings yet for the middle school, and how, when that would happen if it hadn't happened. Do we know that?
This first year, you know, there was a whole lot of change and adaptation that they had to do as they're coming into a new division and so forth. And so they didn't roll out their full-blown, you know, everything that they, you know, are capable of doing to start with. But we have had the Future Chef competition for elementary students, and that went very well. I mean, those kids did a great job. And we will have, there are similar programs that they will roll out at the middle and high school level, but they will be rolled out for next year.
And that's nice, thank you, I appreciate that. But what I'm talking about is the everyday meal. The kids at the middle school have told us that they don't like the food. And so that's what happened at the high school, and they had tastings and things changed. So I'd like to see the same thing for the middle school kids. So if they're, if they want to get my vote and keep my vote, then they got to make some food that the kids are going to eat and that they like.
I'll share your comments with Sodexo.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Egan.
And we'll get a date for the tastings if it hasn't happened already?
We'll talk to Sodexo about it and get back to you with what their response is.
Oh, you don't know if they've had tastings yet or not?
I'm not aware.
Okay,
I'm not-
all right,
I'm not sure.
thank you.
All right. Dr. Jones.
That's just information at this time. We'll bring it back to you in April for approval, and we'll have answer to any questions that the board has at that time.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions before Mr. John steps away from the podium for this particular section? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And the last item that I have for the board, and this is for information as well, and this is to receive revised VSBA policy updates with recommendation for approval of policy updates at April 16th meeting. What we did is we separated out all the policies that only contain legal references or other changes that may have occurred. So these are the more, I would say, routine policy updates. They're not really substantive changes to the policy. So we're asking for these to be approved in April. In April, we'll bring the policies to you that have the more substantial update and then give the board more time to review those policies before we look for approval, probably at the second May meeting of those policies. But these are the ones that, after reviewing all the updates that came from VSBA, we really felt like we're pretty cut and dry with just policy and legal references for the most part, or policies that we don't use.
All right, so tonight is our first opportunity to ask questions or to make comment about any of these proposed policies. Any questions or comments from board members?
I appreciate what Dr. Jones has done. Nonetheless, it's 28 policies.
Yep.
And I think most of us try to review the whole policy in addition to the changes. So it's a lot of work between now and April 16th.
Most
With-
of these, Maggie Walker
Ms.
just
Ayers.
did these. I'm on their policy committee. And most of these are just like a cross-reference change. I mean, it's not anything, like you said.
There's nothing
that
in the text of
changes
the policy that's changed.
It changes dates, it changes legal references, and Maggie Walker pretty much did the same thing. We just literally looked at each one of the cross-references, and it didn't take very long, because we did it probably within an hour. So that was just,
Okay,
the next one's coming.
still
Mr.
We
Chairman?
have to take those in little bits, I think.
all right, Mrs. Emo.
I can appreciate that too, but I'm with Mr. Cole on this one. Spring break is next week, and I kind of wanted to have a break too. And then when we come back, we just have the one meeting, right? And the first meeting of the month is usually filled with lots of stuff. So I'd vote for,
I'm okay with it. I'm just saying that, you know, regardless of when we do it, we've got to do it.
right,
You know,
but I'd like to see it split
Well,
too.
we're not voting on anything at this point. If the desire is to split these and only take up some of these items or some of these proposed policy changes at the next meeting, we can do that. So what is the interest of the
Or
committee?
the other option would be we don't need to bring them back to you until May. It's just,
All right,
we're going to have some other more meaty policies that will have to be reviewed at the same time in order to be approved, before the end of the school year.
well, I would say I do agree with Mr. Cole. I try to read each of these, no matter what the changes are, to make sure that I'm comfortable with where they are. But Mrs. Ayers, do you have a question or a comment?
Well, I just wanted to say, why don't we approach it the way that why don't we do what we can? If some members have an issue with, doing all of these, like you said, we can separate the ones that they've read through at the next meeting and then carry the other ones forward.
Yeah, well, we have not done the agenda for the next meeting. It's not been published. So we have a lot of flexibility here, folks, whatever you'd like to do. Do we want to take up all of them at the next meeting, or do you want to take up half or a portion, or we could carry them all and do them all at one time? What's the desire of the board?
I vote the first page.
First
Only.
page. All right. Well, we're not really voting on this either, so how would you like to do this? Ms. Emos put her desire forward.
Okay.
Can I see that? So that's taking us through
I mean, some of them
GBD.
were literally like a typo, like they corrected like a word that was misspelled. So, I mean, it's really not reviewing policy, it's just really reviewing little.
I understand that, but what Mr. Walters said was, I read it too, because it updates me on, oh yeah, that's right, we do this, or we don't do this. So,
All right, Mr. Kunkel, you have any concerns?
I personally prefer to get them all out of the way at one time.
Mr. Cole?
I'm okay either way on this. If we've got more following, I'd just soon get these off the plate and go to the next one.
A lot more with a lot more to
Yeah.
be changed.
So I can always come back to these and read them later. I'll get through them, I'll get through the policy changes and the other corrections and go back, try to pick them up later on. It just points out that we have far too many policies.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Every time the Virginia legislature meets, we get more. So
Imagine that.
Well, Mr. Cole, you've indicated you were okay either way.
Yeah.
So with that said, I will defer. Ms. Emel would prefer to do half of these on our next meeting. Let's do that. So that'll take us through GBD, staff communication. We can still review everything else. Those of us that have the time, then we can move forward. So if anybody's got a concern, please tell me. We didn't vote on it, but I thought I heard Mr. Cole say he was okay either way.
It's fine.
Did I misunderstand you, sir?
No, I'm fine. I'm
If you
fine.
prefer to take them all up, please say so.
It's just going to increase. What I understand Dr. Jones says is going to increase what we've got to do later, so.
It is.
All right, and I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. Then that's three of us that would prefer to do them all. All right, with that said, then let's keep them all on the agenda. If we're not able to vote on them at that meeting, we're not able to vote on them at that meeting. All right, thank you. I apologize, Mr. Cole. I thought that I understood you to have said
I
it
didn't mean to
differently.
mislead you.
So,
I
No,
didn't
that-
know that there were going to be lots more.
No, no, no.
I should have.
Nope, I misunderstood you. I apologize. All right. So that takes us to the, I'm sorry, other questions or comments regarding these policies? All right, hearing none. All right, next item on the agenda is closed session. Ms. Emel, could I ask you to read the certification and the motion for our closed session, please?
Yes, I recommend and make a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Code 2.2-3711A1 to discuss the employment, resignation, and leave of specific employees, and pursuant to Code 2.2-3711A2 and A4 to discuss the expulsion and school placement of specific students. Codes 2.2-3711A1, A2, and A4.
All right, have the recommendation in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are in closed session. Staff, have a good day. Hope you enjoy some sunshine. Yep, that's right. All right, here's your letter.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I don't forget.
Yep, appreciate that.
Rick, I apologize if I misunderstood you. I thought you
No,
said
I
you
was
were okay either way.
confusing. You didn't misunderstand.
Your son is tall as I am. You know.
Well, speaking of sons, I had the opportunity to...
Stuff. Try to reject.
Oh, okay.
No, I saw you, I finally started looking at email, and I'm like, oh, you're in the division? You know, I've been poking on it today. I just wanted to, I'll let you know what's going on. Perfect. All good, all good.
Thank you very much. Have fun. There were no presentations tonight, right?
It's like in the Dallas folder, you can still see anything in there. You might want to go through and like see if there's anything that you might have downloaded that you're missing, that you might delete. It must be just the big pieces in it.
service he's got, so check it for us and see if the discount.
How did Bridget actually find out if we needed?
You need to stop by Verizon.
Did you?
I think that's what I did.
Well, let me know what you find out, because if they do,
I'll go by there. What kind of phone service? Yeah, not bad. Check.
you might be able to get a discount. I've got it. I've got one.
Because they're gonna send you something, you gotta answer back to them, which proves that you've got the service. You get a discount.
It's probably worth it. I mean, I do AT&T. I'm still making payments on my phone. I don't know if I'd be able to switch over to you guys.
Oh. Sometimes they got to,
Yeah, but my phone's not paid off yet, and I buy it. I don't know if I have to keep paying, because I'm making payments on my phone still, so. I'll have to mess with you guys and see. That'd be awesome. Just trying to make my name tag over me every time with the camera. We do the billing, my name is right here. Whenever anyone comes up to talk, they see my name. Gracias. I don't think so. John asked me the same question the other night, I think. You know, it's probably, you just probably have to set up a recorder in the conference room and sit around and wait for it to be over. Oh, is it? I can't. I can't remember if I've ever done a workshop for them. I know the last one, but the last budget workshop they had was over in the conference room. At least, when you weren't here, Julie, so. They have done one over here, it's only been like one. I can't remember.
I know they was talking about it. They're trying to get everything. This is a special duty position.
I kinda wanna go.
We've heard you the first 3 times you said that.
3 more, but who's counting? that?
94 more days.
Sure.
Got it.
Ms. Eam, will you tell us when you're ready?
Thank you.
We were doing in there, so now I gotta start.
I do want to remind you of the policies that are on Board Docs. And you can see those draft policies on Board Docs.
Okay.
So you don't have to pull up that PDF if you want to just look at one policy at a time.
So the drafts are out there too?
If you go
Okay.
over here, I can kind of show you, the internet's not working so far, but if you go here to policy, see how you have active,
Okay.
draft, and retired? If you go to draft, it'll pull up all the policies that are in that PDF, and like I said, it's not working as well as.
That'll be much easier to open with the internet in my
You
home.
can look
Thank
at
you.
each one individually and see the changes.
Instead of scrolling through that big
And thank you for
PDF.
this
Thank you
sheet
very
too,
much.
Michelle, for this
So
little
here's
cheat
one.
sheet.
Here's the top. See how it comes up?
Mhm.
You can see the changes of the policy.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that
Appreciate
helps
that.
a lot. Thank you,
So
Michelle.
like I said, when you go to policy, just hit draft, and it'll
Okay.
bring up all the ones that you have before you now. for
Thank you.
consideration.
All right. All right. So is everyone ready?
Yep.
All right. Ms. Eam, do you have a motion for us?
I make a motion.
Second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're back in open session. Ms. Eam.
Whereas the Powhatan County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was members' knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Aye.
Aye.
Superintendent, closed session.
All right.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is board comments. Mr. Kunko, can we start with you, sir?
I have nothing other than wishing everybody and the staff to have a good spring break.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Ayers.
I'll ditto what Mr. Kunka said, and, you know, just to take a moment to thank the Board of Supervisors for separating the school board budget out and approving that earlier, because that really, I think that does help us, does it not, Dr. Jones?
Yes, it does. Very
So,
much so.
just want to send out a thank you to them.
Wanted to say that I attended the Youth Mental Health First Aid Workshop last Friday. It was a free class, and offered by, and the book is offered by VCU, and I have since found out, and it's free trainings for schools, and I would teachers that's to take advantage of that opportunity. I think we should. Let's see, Busy Parker, both nights were a very nice presentation and a good representation of our county and our schools and all we're doing. I visited the High School Opportunities Job Fair last Friday, and that was very nice that they had put together. I don't know if the young people realize how nice. I mean, people were there offering them summer jobs and colleges and opportunities and things. I think that was a wonderful thing that our high school did for them. And Saturday night, I saw the high school show choir perform at the Show Choir Classic, and I saw a few other schools. It was kind of like a Las Vegas, you know, all the glittery, shimmery outfits. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Emel. Mr. Cole.
Just, once again, Dr. But there is, you know, it's still gonna be well below what Maggie Walker is. But there's, I think we can expect some regular tuition increases from them because they're trying to get their salaries up to be better than what they are right now. They're pretty low in the region. They have a number of part-time people that have probably significant, probably in the 20 to 25% turnover on their budget at the next meeting in April. But, you know, like I say, Dr. Jones is aware of it, and I think we plan for it in their budget, so it's not a huge amount, but I do want you to know that's out there.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. I would just say that I attended a couple events at the high school recently, the FFA dinner, and then also the, I suppose it was an orientation night for the parents for the varsity and junior varsity football programs. Heard some comments about that. Clearly, our new coach has some plans, and I look forward to see what he'll do with the program as we move forward. And I do want to take a moment to thank the staff that were involved in the variety of ways with our budget preparations, benefits, and all of those things. I know that that is a very detailed process, a very time-consuming process, but critically important as tonight we approved about a $48 million budget. That's a significant amount of work, and it represents a significant amount of the revenue for our county. And just appreciate their efforts in putting that together. Thank you very much, Dr. Jones, to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones, your comments, sir?
No additional comments other than to say, to Ms. Emel's point, we have had some staff that have gone through that youth mental health training. I found out from Ms. Wojcicki, and she appreciated you giving her those materials, or that I passed the materials on to her, and we are going to be investigating having some other people go through that training, staff that could benefit from that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, is that all,
Thank you.
sir?
That is all.
All right, last item on our docket would be, on our agenda would be motion for adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion. Motion is second. All in favor of adjournment, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Have a wonderful evening, folks.
And a spring break.
Spring break.
Yay.
Yay.
You're fast enough.
Going to the beach.
You are? Good.
Good for
Nice.
you.
Very
Good
good.
for you.
I was afraid lacrosse would have gotten in your way.
I don't have to babysit. That's not really true. Travis and Lauren are going away for
That's
their
fine.
30th birthday, so
Have a good
I
time.
am
I hope you
babysitting.
get good weather.